Out of all the products we are looking forward to this year, the one that has the most intrigue and mystery surrounding it are Apple's next generation M2 Macs. And this makes sense. After they hit our expectations out of the park with their first batch of M1 Macs, Apple has been firing on all cylinders with their Mac hardware. And out of all the Macs that we are expecting for a follow-up this year, there has been one of them that has outstripped all the others in terms of popularity and hype: the next generation MacBook Air. And there's a lot to be excited about here, from a rumored redesign that could be its biggest yet, more ports, new colors, and behind it all, a more powerful M2 chip. And the best part is, we may not even have to wait too much longer, with last-minute rumors swirling that Apple is racing to finish the MacBook Air sooner rather than later, and it could possibly even be at Apple's next WWDC 2022 event, which is just one short week away. So for this video, I wanted to do one final preview on what is expected out of this new MacBook Air, when I think the release date will be, and how much it will cost, and well, you'll want to order one right away. So first of all, let's talk about the MacBook Air in general. Now, I have covered this new M2 MacBook Air since I first heard the initial leaks surrounding it, because when Apple first brought out their M1 chips, the feature that stood out the most to me was the power efficiency of those chips. Apple was able to take products like the old Intel MacBook Air and suddenly not include a fan in them with hardly any sacrifice in day-to-day performance. In fact, there wasn't any sacrifice because the M1 was more powerful than what Apple was offering with those older Intel processors. And this laptop ran cooler than previous generations of the MacBook Air without any active cooling. My eyes were opened even more when Apple took the amazing power of the M1 chip and put it into an even thinner and lighter product: the iPad Pro, and after that, the iPad Air. These chips are so efficient that not only could they run unhindered in an Ultrabook laptop design, but they could even run in one of the thinnest products that Apple sells. It made me also think of the possibilities for what a redesign of the MacBook Air could look like. Let's not forget, these initial M1 Macs were basically proof of concepts that Apple could make almost no changes to the existing Intel Macs on the market, put their own custom Apple silicon into these products, and not only could they match Intel blow for blow, but they could beat them in almost every single metric. To be harsh to Apple, these initial Macs were lazy. Great products, but lazy nonetheless. It made me think of more cutting-edge Apple designs of the past. The 12-inch MacBook was ahead of its time. That was 7 years ago when that product was released, and it's still the thinnest and lightest laptop that Apple has ever released. And while it may have had slow and hot Intel processors in the past, this time it could be rebirthed with more modern Apple silicon, and it would fix almost every problem that reviewers had with that laptop. Well, almost, because one of the flaws that we would later learn about that laptop was the butterfly keyboard, a keyboard that was too fragile and had too high of a failure rate to really be considered for future Macs after Apple abandoned it in favor of the return of the well-beloved Magic Keyboard with its more traditional scissor switch mechanisms. Taking that all into account, it stands to reason that the next MacBook Air may not be as bleeding edge as the thin and light 12-inch MacBook, which is kind of crazy to think about. Not because Apple Silicon couldn't be designed into a package like that, I mean, we've already seen it done, but because Apple would still need to fit in a bigger, full-size scissor switch keyboard design, which has more key travel in its design and therefore wouldn't be able to fit into that same thinner body. Strong leaks and rumors seem to agree, saying the new MacBook Air will be thinner and lighter than the current generation, and it will feature a flatter design overall, taking inspiration from Apple's latest product redesigns. Think of the current MacBook Pro design, but at a much thinner level. This will even include thinner bezels around the MacBook Air's display, and it could feature the same notch design as we currently have with the MacBook Pro. Current rumors say it will move up slightly in display size from 13.3 inches to 13.6 inches, and with thinner bezels and just a slight bump up in that screen size, this could result in a MacBook Air that is even smaller volume-wise than the current iteration. They will also take more inspiration from the MacBook Pro by bringing back the MagSafe charging port, but don't think this thing's gonna get a lot of ports. It's still only gonna feature just 2 Thunderbolt USB-C ports as its main data connectors. This would line up more with what I think are now 2 clear and distinct separate Mac strategies. The Pro side of the Macs that can be thicker and heavier for better thermal management with a lot more ports, and then the consumer side, which would feature thinner and lighter designs and focus on efficiency rather than raw power. Even down to the desktop level, we can see that Apple is already applying this strategy with their new 24-inch M1 iMac. That product is thinner and lighter than the older design, even though it doesn't have to be, and it's focusing more on efficiency rather than raw power. But if we did a direct comparison against the older design, we would see that it lost out on a fair number of ports to achieve that thin design, so we shouldn't expect any less from this new MacBook Air. Another layer of this consumer side seems to be the more colorful and playful design approach. The new iMac launched in 7 bold and beautiful colors, and it's rumored that the new M2 MacBook Air will borrow heavily from this iMac design inspiration, and it will be the first Mac laptop since the iBook to be offered in such a wide array of color options. On the inside, we should expect a chip upgrade to what everyone has pretty much been calling the M2 chip. This would be the successor to the M1 chip, and it would feature the same 8-core design as its predecessor, but don't be fooled, each individual core on the M2 chip will be faster and stronger, and that would mean on single core performance, which affects most of the tasks that we do on a daily basis, these M2 MacBook Airs will be much faster. And because each core is stronger, when you add them up, it will add to a nice boost in multi-core performance as well. The GPU of the M2 chip is supposedly going to feature the most focus on improvement. Not only will each of these core counts get stronger, much like the CPU, but the GPU will actually be increasing in core count this year from an 8-core design to a new 10-core design. Now, the bigger question is when. When will we get these new Macs? I mean, it's been over 550 days since the release of the M1 MacBook Air, marking one of the longest waits we have ever had for a new MacBook Air update. Thankfully, that wait may be coming to an end. According to Mark Gurman from Bloomberg, his sources behind the scenes say that Apple is gearing up to launch the new M2 MacBook Air at this year's WWDC, which takes place on June 6, 2022. In his Power On newsletter, Gurman says if there's any hardware at WWDC, it will likely be on the Mac side. The company has been aiming to launch the next MacBook Air with M2 chips at this conference. With the recent supply chain crunch and related closures in China, that has complicated that, but developers say that Apple employees are increasingly using next-generation MacBook Airs with their apps, and that is a sign that a new Mac is close. To reiterate and explain this, Gurman is basically saying that the new MacBook Airs with the M2 chips are done. They're ready to be released. Apple has finished the design, and the only really potential thing affecting the release of this product is the supply chain and manufacturing issues, because basically, Apple can't produce enough of these Macs for a launch at WWDC. Basically, if Apple can't produce enough of these Macs for a launch time by their next event, we may not get an announcement. However, if Apple shakes out these issues, it's possible we could see an announcement take place as soon as this event. So I imagine if the delays are significant enough, this could push the announcement back. But with the final design being finished, even if we don't see this M2 Mac at WWDC, it's possible we could see this announced for a summer release, because I think Apple wants to get this product out as soon as possible to have it ready for the back-to-school season and to help alleviate the existing supply strain on their existing products. I think based on rumors, the hardware of this MacBook Air won't feature a mini LED display anymore. So if we take that into consideration and say it starts with a standard LCD display, it would also mean friendlier pricing for the MacBook Air, so I think it would come in at the same $1,000 price point if it does not have the mini LED display. If it does, I would probably expect the price point to be $100 to $200 more. However, regardless of when it's released, one thing you'll want to do is, if you're in the market for a new MacBook Air, or quite frankly, any new Apple product, my advice to you is to order one right away. I say this not to help Apple in any way, but to help you. If you're waiting for this product, just look at the existing shipping delays we still have on older products like the MacBook Pro or the Mac Studio. Apple is really supply constrained with a lot of these popular products, and if you want one of these Macs close to launch day, I would recommend ordering one as soon as they are announced, or risk facing months of delays. I'm telling you this now, even before this product is announced, to help make sure that you get the product that you have been waiting for. But yeah, in what I hope is the final preview video of this new MacBook Air, This is basically everything I know about this product, and just like you, I'm tired of the rumors. I want to see this thing announced already. So here's hoping and praying we get an announcement very, very soon.